Welcome to the Story Nerd Podcast, Hook Your Reader episode. This is where we give authors our professional advice about their query letters and first 10 pages writing samples. My name is Valerie Francis. I'm an author and a story editor, and I teach women who are writing in all genres how stories work so they can finish their books faster and without frustration.
And I am Kathleen Fox, or Kat. I'm a literary agent at the Rights Factory based in Toronto and a freelance editor at Fox Editorial.
On today's episode, we're reviewing a mystery from Andrew Irving, who also writes under the pseudonym Rue I. McLeod. Now, it takes a lot of guts for writers to send in their work and have us talk about it publicly. But you know what? It shows that they're willing to step out and bet on themselves. And so we're happy to help. So Andrew, thank you for sharing and for giving us all an opportunity to learn. Now, before we get started, we'd love it if you could help other writers find our show by leaving a rating and review. Apple Podcast listeners, you can do it right from the phone. Go to the show's landing page, scroll to the bottom, click the stars. It's that simple. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Alrighty, I'll start, Kathleen, by reading the query letter. Dear Kathleen, I am excited to introduce my 86K novel, Pigs Don't Do Pearls. My work was inspired by the original Cain and Abel, but also novels like Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter and The Wild Laughter by Kaylin Hughes. It is stated on your manuscript wishlist blog that you are looking for adult, commercial, and literary fiction with a specific genre of mystery that is well-paced with lots of clues. My tale, Pigs Don't Do Pearls, ticks these boxes. In my novel, Pigs Don't Do Pearls, Jack returns to his family home in suburban Melbourne from the UK after years in exile to clean his deceased parents' house for a quick sale. He discovers a house being consumed by vines and weeds. The native birds are gone. His older brother, Mungo, is rotting in their father's recliner, living off Chardonnay and cigarettes. Life has taken two different tacks for the brothers. Jack ran from betrayal and heartbreak caused by his older brother, whereas Mungo remained and was overwhelmed by his betrayal and is haunted by a false accusation of murder by his closest friends. Jack wants to forgive, forget, and move on. Mungo wants only to rot and die in their family home. Both brothers must resolve their past conflict and learn to rise above the issues stunting their lives before the house can be saved, cleaned, and sold. I don't do X/Twitter because I seem to attract a fetid, phony collection of misfits looking for a fight. I do post on Instagram, but unless you're interested in my patch of earth in Andalusia, you won't find much succor. I do have a newsletter, and I reach out to my readers once a month with my thoughts, free stuff on offer, short stories from myself, and a little hint that I have tomes on the Amazon platform under Rue I. McLeod they might want to read. I'm an Australian who lives in England and Spain. I have traveled widely through the Great Barren Australian outback and the damp, grey climes of Old Blighty. All my time is spent writing and tending a savage patch of arid Andalusian turf. I have attached the first 10 pages of my novel, Pigs Don't Do Pearls, and a query letter addressed to Kathleen to this letter and look forward to your reply. Sincerely, Andrew Irving. Kathleen, with your agent hat on, what are your thoughts on Andrew's query letter?
Yeah. Okay, let me scroll up here. It starts with, I'm excited to introduce. This is strong, confident language, which I always love to see, instead of I'm seeking representation for my novel or something like that. That's fine, but I love to see that little bit extra, right? So I'm excited to introduce, I am excited to submit, etc., etc. It starts with the word count in the title, but not the genre. If I go back up here, the genre is so we have kind of two paragraphs for the intro. I think this should be combined into one paragraph, and the genre should be clearly stated with the rest of the metadata, because at the beginning I was like, okay, what kind of novel is this? So when we get to that second paragraph, it says, it is stated in your MSWL blog that you are looking for adult, commercial, and literary fiction with a specific genre of mystery. And so this is what my book is. So now, okay, great. I know that it's mystery. However, yes, it does state that I'm looking for adult novels. Yes, it does state that I'm looking for a commercial. I think it also says upmarket. And I think it also says literary fiction. But this is almost pointing to, hey, I have a book that's commercial and literary, and you can't have a book that is commercial and literary. It has to be one or the other. It might be upmarket, which sits kind of right in the middle. But this this almost would tell me that you're not quite sure what it is. Um, so that's kind of my thought there. I also noticed that the title was in here, I think, 4 times. You only need to have your title in there once, just at the very beginning. Um, let me see. So there are some other kind of housekeeping things. I went over the title. The bio paragraphs also could be condensed into one short paragraph. We're looking for about 50 or 75 words there. It highlights any writing credentials that you may have, and maybe like a little bit about who you are outside of writing, so we get that sense of personality. There is that one line there that says, all my time is spent writing and tending a savage patch of arid Andalusian turf. I like that. That's got personality. It tells me something about what you're doing outside of writing. So I thought that was really good. So we don't also need the other stuff that's above that. Um, let's see, the plot paragraphs. I'm just going over my notes here. Yeah, so and at the very end it said what you're including here. Agents don't need to know what you're including. They're going to assume that you're following their submission guidelines, and they already know what they have requested in their guidelines. So you don't need to say, I am attaching my whatever it is you're attaching. I would always encourage writers to say something like, thank you for your time and consideration. May I send you the full manuscript? Because um, that will also tell them subtly and that you have a finished manuscript and it's ready for them, but you're also ending it with a question. And that's kind of like a marketing thing. It's kind of how brains work. But if you're ending it with a question or a call to action, it helps to compel the agent to answer. And in this industry, there's no guarantee of that. So anything that you can do to prompt that reply in a subtle and professional way, I think is good. Moving on to the plot paragraph. So this we're the plot paragraphs are telling me that there's maybe some animosity between the two brothers, right? But I don't know why. There's some kind of vague statements there about some betrayal and heartbreak and whatnot, but what kind of betrayal? So I would encourage you to be a little bit more specific. You don't want to give spoilers in the plot paragraphs, but you do want to have some specificity. Because right now, like I could be thinking, like, how did his brother betray him? Did he snatch his girlfriend away from him? Did he not support him in some way with some big life thing? Like it could be anything, right? So I would like to have a general idea of where the story is going, because depending on what that betrayal is, it could help lead the story, right? So more specific details, I'm kind of wondering, like, what's at stake? We know what the goal is. We know that the goal is to get this house sold. There's got to be obviously some kind of understanding between the two brothers. Um, but what happens if he doesn't go and deal with this? What happens if he does? What's he going to lose either way? So that's kind of the stuff that I'm looking for in the plot paragraphs. Introduction to protagonist, what their norm is. So we have an idea of what could be taken away, what the inciting incident is, what their goal is, what's standing in their way, like the antagonist or antagonistic force, and then what risky thing they must do to reach their goal. What are they going to lose if they fail? And all of that has to be woven together with voice, intention, and curiosity, and emotion. And it's I know it's not easy to accomplish all of that in the plot paragraphs, right? It's such a short space, and you should be aiming for somewhere between, I would say, 200 to 225 words. And then the total of the query letter, a comfortable range would be 350 to 375 words. So, 200 or so words to fit what your novel is about. I understand that is hard, but I promise you there is a way to do it. Uh, and there's a way to do it well and to have the voice in there and the curiosity and the tension and motion. That's all really, really important. So I would actually remove some of the bio stuff by about half, and then you've got some more room to add in those really important specific plot details that will give me more of a an idea about where the story is headed.
Okay, follow-up questions.
Hmm.
In his query letter, Andrew puts all the book titles in italics. So this is a technical thing. Should they be in italics? Should they be in all caps?
So the title of this unpublished manuscript should be in all caps. That is standard for things that are not published, and it also helps yours stand out because the published titles, the standard is to italicize them and not have them in all caps. So it's a minor technical thing, but yeah, that should be done.
Okay. Okay, now, I also had a question around genre. Um, and I think genre is one of those really weird, difficult things to discuss because we all have a bit of a different take on what genre is and what it means and how we classify stories. Okay. With that caveat, okay, if we all just work from that premise, Andrew says that his story is a mystery, but none of his comps are mysteries. Um, and and I'll talk more about this when we get into the first 10 pages because they don't feel mystery-ish either. So Grief is the Thing with Feathers and The Wild Laughter are both listed as literary fiction as well as on Amazon. They're on lists that have to do with family connections. And Cain and Abel is also a story about family. So um, as an agent reading those first paragraphs in Andrew's letter, what is your expectation? Like when you open up his sample pages, what are you expecting to see? What kind of story are you expecting to see, given the way he has described his story?
Excellent question. Because it's being pitched the way it's being pitched, and then because it is because he's wording things the way that he is in the plot paragraphs, those two things aren't quite adding up for me. The the vibe of the plot paragraphs isn't giving me mystery vibes. And then when I
Okay.
get to the pages, I'm also not getting mystery vibes. So we do have to remember that in pretty much every story, there's going to be an element of mystery, right? That's what helps to compel us to keep reading. There's always something to figure out, another puzzle piece to get. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your story is a mystery. A mystery feels cozy. It's methodical. It's usually slower paced, but it just has that vibe, right? Um, and I'm not picking up that vibe here. So when I was reading the query letter, I wasn't honestly quite sure what to expect in the pages.
Okay. I want to touch on something you just said. I really don't think any of these episodes are going to be 30 minutes, Kathleen. Um, and this has to do with the problem of language in our business, which, the irony, right? We're using the word mystery. So there's mystery as a form of narrative drive, which is the main character has more information than the reader. And like Sherlock Holmes knows more than we do. Or there's just, we can tell that regardless of what the commercial genre is of the book, we can tell that the main character is holding something back. And that's really interesting to us because we're curious to find out what that is. So that's
Hmm.
mystery as a form of narrative drive. But then there's mystery as a commercial genre, like a cozy mystery, right? Or a crime story or a crime thriller or something where there's a crime of some sort, whether it's a murder or I always think of the Lillian Jackson Braun books that have the cat as the detective. I used to love those books when I was little. And maybe the pie was stolen. there's some crime that has happened and we're trying to figure out who done it, right? That's mystery as a genre. And the way he had pitched it, I thought of the latter, the mystery as a genre, as opposed to mystery as a form of narrative drive. So again, this comes back to really understanding the theory. Okay, let's move swiftly on so that we can at least get this episode done in under an hour. I have a question about the author platform, because it's somewhere in your query letter, you want to talk about yourself, give a little your own bio. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about Andrew's platform paragraph. And by that, I mean, the paragraph that starts where he talks about how he uses X or Twitter. Is that the kind of thing an agent is looking for in the bio paragraph or not? And what advice would you have for writers around this?
Quick answer is no. Not so quick answer is we don't need to know what you're not using or why. And we don't need to know what you are using and why. It's taking up, I don't know, 25 or 30 words, something like that. And that could be used for plot. Plot is the most important thing. That is what we care about the most. Really, if you have a large following somewhere, or like he mentions a newsletter, I'm more interested, like I'm not so interested at this particular point in the query letter, what he does in the newsletter and how he presents it. I would be more interested in knowing how many subscribers he has. Especially nowadays, because newsletters, Substack, etc., that's becoming more and more popular. And knowing how many subscribers, like people that have clicked, yes, I want more information, I want to follow and hear what you have to say. Those follower numbers matter. But really, you don't even need to say anything about X or Twitter or Instagram. What you can do underneath your sign off is just put a link to your handle, right? That's all we need to know. Then we know you use Instagram, you're inviting us to go and look at your Instagram, and then we can find everything we need to know.
And if you're using query trackers, sometimes there's actually a place there, like, are you on X? Are you on Instagram? Put in your
Right,
handles. There.
right.
All right, let's move on to the first 10 pages writing sample. Do you want to go first?
I do. Sorry, my cat is
All
wanting
right,
attention.
I have 2 cats and 2 dogs, so I totally understand.
Yeah. Yes, query letter. Or sorry, not query letter, the pages. Oh my goodness, Charlie. Sorry. Okay. My first thought when I got to the pages was, oh, he has a sister. This is not in the query letter at all. There's no mention of a sister. There's no mention of anyone besides his brother and his 2 parents. So it was surprising to me that she was the first character that we meet on these pages. Do I like surprise in the first pages? Yes, but not when it's something that's, I guess, not revealed in the query letter. Like, that's not the kind of surprise I'm looking for. I did like that sense of curiosity when he's leaving the reader with when his sister knows why he left. He doesn't explain it. He doesn't go into details there. He just drops that little seed, the curiosity seed, and that gets me thinking. Okay, something is going to be revealed here. So that's always good, leaving those little breadcrumbs. When you implied that there's something to be known, something that is hidden, it makes the reader want to find out. So that's why they're going to keep reading. And it's not just that on its own, it's that we can tell it's something big and it has to do with a big part of this story, right? I feel like we're getting a really good sense of the relationship dynamics here between all 3 siblings. They each have their own way of doing things. They're connected by blood. And obviously there is something going on between the 2 brothers. We don't know what that is again yet. But it's good to get that sense of how their relationships are working. It's very evident in the way that she's speaking to him, and then his internal thoughts about their relationship and things like that. So in the query letter, I wondered what it was that made Jack leave Australia in the first place, what it was that his brother did to betray him. I talked about that. Could be anything. So I do like that one of my wild theories turned out to be not so wild after all. um, so that's kind of, like you do want to point to something and kind of let the reader theorize and figure it out or try to figure it out. And it doesn't matter if the reader is correct or incorrect with that theory. We just want them to be theorizing about it so that they're thinking about it, their brains feel engaged, and then they can get that sense of satisfaction when they find out what it is. I also couldn't tell on the pages whether, let me just back up here. Sarah was an interesting character. I couldn't tell in the pages whether she was real or not. I think she maybe at one point was real. I don't know if she's still existing or if it's just maybe she's a figment of his imagination. Is this a person he couldn't let go of? Is this a person who died and she's haunting him, but maybe not in a bad way? I have no idea. And I don't know if that is intentional or not. I don't know if we're supposed to wonder that or if it should be clarified that she is a ghost or she is an ex from his past and has followed him to the UK. Like, I have no idea. So that's just something to think about. It's not necessarily incorrect. It's just something that I thought about when I was reading. I also really liked that Andrew was breaking up the dialogue with some narration. So there is dialogue going on, and then we're getting a sense of what the scene looks like, the descriptive details. We're getting a sense of the past, right? Like and some details that are maybe informing why she's speaking to him the way that she is, and maybe informing what the brothers are, what the conflict is there. So in these opening pages, there are some great details. We have a good idea about what he's going to need to do, what he does not want to do, what he does not want to face. But I don't know what's at stake for him. I don't know exactly. I mean, we do find out what his brother did, but is that the only thing that drives him to like leave the country and the family and everything, his whole life behind, and start out something or somewhere new? That's a big step to take. And when you're young and you have your heart broken, and it's so, I mean, that is a huge betrayal for your brother to steal your girlfriend basically right from under you. But it sounds like his girlfriend maybe had a hand in it anyways. But is that the whole reason why he picked up his entire life and started on another continent, right? So I don't know enough details about that yet. I really would like to have a better idea of stakes. What's he leaving behind if he goes? And what is so bad that it's risky to him to go back if he chooses to go back? So to me, this feels very much like a character-led story, not commercial. And there are some big themes or lessons that Jack will still need to learn. And by the way, I don't think his name was mentioned at all in the opening pages. And you don't need to like specifically introduce the reader to the character, like first and last name and whatnot. Just have his sister say his name, like, Jack, are you listening to me? Or something like that. So then it's woven in, it's organic. We just know what his name is. So yeah, it feels like it is a very much a character driven story. He has some internal things that he needs to face and some external circumstances that are putting pressure on him, and affecting his internal conflict. But again, I am not picking up any mystery vibes. Yes, Sarah is mysterious in her, on her own. Yes, it's mysterious why he left, but that does not constitute a mystery in terms of genre, like you were saying. I think the line level writing is good, but I do think that there needs to be some work on structure. And I just want to also say that maybe this is a mystery and it's just not opening It's not feeling that like that way in the opening, right? We're only getting a very small taste. But if you're pitching it as a mystery and it's not feeling like a mystery in those opening pages, that's going to create an issue for any agent who gets that far.
Yeah, it's going to be a mismatch between the pitch and the pages.
Right.
We picked up on a lot of the same stuff, Kathleen.
Hmm.
Before I really get into it, though, I have a question that I'm hoping you can shed some light on. You can maybe give us a bit of guidance on. When Andrew sent in his work, it was actually more than 10 pages. It came out to 10 and a quarter pages or something like that. Now, honestly, I have no idea if this is a big deal for agents or not. Help. What do you think?
Yeah. So in my query manager, I ask for 10 pages. That's quite common. Some people want 20, 25, whatever. Um, and there's always a lot of question around like, oh my goodness, my chapter doesn't end until the 11th page or the 12th page. Um, I would say in most cases, like if your chapter is wrapping up and it ends on the 11th page, or even like there's a couple of lines on the 12th page, if I'm interested, it's not going to matter. And really, it doesn't, for me, anyways. I can't speak for other agents, but for me, it doesn't matter that you are sending an extra page, because if I'm interested and I get to the end of that 10th page and it just drops off, I'm like, wait, no, where's the rest? I want to read more. And yes, that is the goal, but the goal also is to show the agent that you've got the chops for this, right? So showing the end of that first chapter, I think, is important. So I'm not so worried about 10 pages. I'm more worried about, I want to see how this chapter ends and how you know how to write the end of a chapter. If I ask for 10 pages and you send me 25, I'm going to be like, okay, this person didn't listen to my submission guidelines. And that's immediately a tick in the wrong box, right?
That's
you
right.
don't want you don't want that. So I would just say be mindful of whatever the submission guidelines are. And if it goes over like just a little bit, then that's totally fine. I wouldn't, I would hate to think that an agent would say no based on the page count. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah. But again, I can't speak for other agents, but I think that's the general consensus.
Yeah, and I would, as a writer, I would say don't give an agent any reason to say no. And if,
Yes.
I mean, why do that to yourself?
Hmm.
Because you never know. You could hit on this could be a really amazing agent, and you just got him or her on a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A
Don't give
really
another
lovely
reason.
person who has you're like the 50th query they've looked at, and the 25 people ahead of you all sent in 15 pages instead of 10, the 10 they asked for, and the person's just done. So I would err on the side of caution, because even if the scene is 12 pages, after 10 pages, they can tell whether you can write. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for what that's worth.
Hmm.
All right. All right. So, Andrew, something that you do very well is create a sense of atmosphere. There is a feeling of grit and coldness and of hardship. There is nothing soft about the world you're creating. There's nothing bright or sunny. Even in the natural world, when he's outside, it's not a bright, sunny day. The opening pages take place by the water, and yes, um, that's nature, which is great. Um, but we don't get a feeling of the natural world. It's very, I was going to say industrial. It's not really industrial, but it is that hardness of the civilized world versus being out in the woods, a more natural world. And he references seagulls and a swan and fish, but they're all dark images, right? Seagulls in Newfoundland, we call them the rats of the sky. And if you've ever spent any time by a wharf when fishermen are gutting their catch, this is not a warm and fuzzy atmosphere. It's harsh, it's noisy, it's smelly, and there's a very high chance that a seagull's going to poop on you. And yes, it has happened to me, and it is disgusting. I am so glad I had my hair up that day. That's all I can say. And he references swans. Well, swans are famously aggressive, right? Yet they're beautiful, but they're mean. And the fish, the way he describes them, they're not, beautiful silvery fish in crystal clear blue water. No, they're described as scaly and slithery. So, he's done an excellent job of creating an atmosphere and of establishing a world that is harsh. So we know what we're getting. We have a really vivid sense of the type of world we're entering. And that's not easy to do. So well done, Andrew. Um, Again, yes, I think there are areas for improvement. We all have them. And interestingly, Kathleen and I picked up on a couple of them. So the chapter, your opening chapter, starts with a line of dialogue. It is this: Your mission, your first mission is him, my sister declared. All right. Now, the truth is, if you go into the bookstore and you open up a bunch of books on the shelves, you are going to see a whole lot of books that start with a line of dialogue followed by the dialogue tag. But it's actually a really weak opening. And I want to tell you why. It's not just me being cranky. There is an actual reason why that is a weak opening and why it can really quickly be remedied. The reason it's a problem is that the reader has no idea who's speaking. It's just a line of dialogue, just dangling out there unanchored in the air. One of our highest priorities as storytellers is to evoke an emotional reaction from our reader. And curiosity and empathy, which go hand in glove, I mean, those are king, right? Those are the emotions that we are really trying to create. Regardless of the genre, regardless of the type of story, we want our reader to empathize with our protagonist and be curious about the plot so that they are wondering what's going to happen next, so that they turn the page, right? And get all the way to the end of our book. But since we don't know who's talking or why they're saying what they're saying or to whom they're saying it, it falls flat. It's meaningless. There's nothing for us to have empathy with, no one for us to have empathy with, and nothing for us to be curious about. And if we're talking about the opening pages of a book, you can't afford to waste any time. You got to really, from the first sentence, start trying to find a way to create curiosity and empathy. Also, just like Kathleen said, the sister is the very first character we're introduced to. So I'm expecting her to be extremely important to this story. So I also wondered why she wasn't in the query letter. Andrew is introducing her to us even before he introduces the main character. And both the sister and the main character are unnamed, which is something I also picked up on, Kathleen. So I just want to spend a minute here and just have a quick side note about naming characters. So the protagonist is unnamed in the opening pages, although from the query letter, we know his name is Jack. Now, having an unnamed protagonist is, in and of itself, it's not a problem. There are whole books where the protagonist is unnamed. The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman is a prime example. That's the first time I realized that I read a book and I had no idea who the protagonist was or what his name was. That said, this is a very advanced level of writing. And it is hard to pull off. So all I can say is proceed with caution for anyone who wants to write a book where the protagonist is unnamed. With respect to secondary characters, as soon as you name a character, the reader starts tracking him or her. Giving a character a name automatically elevates them. It gives them a higher place in the story hierarchy, right? And everything in story exists in a hierarchy. And this all has to do with cast design and how you've set your cast up, which is a whole other topic that I've gone into in a whole other season here on the show. So by all means, go back and listen to those episodes. So in these opening pages, the sister, who is the first character we meet, is unnamed and the protagonist unnamed. And there is a girl, or it might be two different girls, I wasn't sure, who are also unnamed. By contrast, we have Mungo, Lucy, and Sarah, who are named. So the thing I was wondering is this: does this accord with the overall cast design for the story? is this Andrew's intention that the main character and the sister and these girls, or one girl, are they of lesser status in the story than Mungo, Lucy, and Sarah? Or not? I'm not sure. And I can't tell from these opening pages what the intention is. So, all of this to say that honestly, I think the opening pages would be stronger by introducing your reader to the protagonist first, or even to Mungo first, since I suspect Mungo is the primary antagonist. So, I mean, you're really doing yourself a huge favor by starting with the protagonist. That is just true, because when a reader approaches a story consciously, they are looking for a place to, they're looking for a character to attach to. They're looking for a place to put their empathy. And if the first character we meet is someone we think we can attach to, we are going to attach to them. Unless it's the antagonist and it is very clear that this character is a bad guy and we are therefore repelled, but our very repulsion of that antagonist creates empathy for the protagonist, who we then meet next. So it's absolutely possible to start with the antagonist. It is more difficult to pull off, though. So again, proceed with caution. And Kathleen, just like you said, name the main character, and the way you do that is through an effective use of exposition. And Kathleen gave a great example of that. Like the sister on the phone could have said, "Jack, would you please just listen to me?" Something like that. Now, Andrew, the single most important thing that I think that you can do to hook your reader in these first 10 pages, honestly, is to study scenes and learn how to write a working scene. There's a lot of backstory here and there's a lot of exposition, but there isn't a working scene. So, of course, now that begs the question, right? What is a working scene? I've got a whole training on this, and I have a 6-week program where I work one-on-one with writers on their scene writing skills, because it's super important. If you can write a scene that works, I'm telling you, you can write a story that works, because it's everything because a scene is a story in microcosm. That's why that's true. If you can write a scene that works, you can write a story that works. There's just way too much to go into here on this episode, but I want to give you a jumping off point, and it's this. Start with the object of desire. In other words, what does the main character want in this scene? And then you want to build in tension so that the reader becomes curious about whether or not the main character gets the thing that they want in this scene, the scene level object of desire. In the opening pages of a novel, whatever the scene level object of desire is, it has to somehow feed into the story level object of desire. Now, Kathleen, you also touched on this, because this opens up the whole can of worms about where to start a story. And you know what? Knowing where to start a story is an art form all in itself. Yes, there's theory around it. Absolutely. There's a whole bunch of theory around it. But at the end of the day, it's also a bit of an intuitive feeling, and it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of reading the books that you love. And when you finish reading the book, go back and reread the first chapter and really ask yourself, I wonder why the author started there. How does it impact the overall story that the story started there? And what if they had started it in a different place? It's an art and a science, mostly an art, frankly. So without reading Andrew's entire novel, honestly, I don't know if he started the book in the right place. He may have nailed it. I don't know. I don't have enough information to comment on that. But what I can say is that the protagonist doesn't have a clear object of desire in these 10 pages. His sister's asking him to come to Australia to help deal with their brother, but he's not making any decision. And characters need to be presented in a scene, in a working scene, with an unexpected situation that they must respond to. If this is a mystery, as Andrew indicated in his query letter, then the protagonist must be an active and, in fact, a proactive character. Like, we do not have wiggle room on that as writers, because, and this has to do with reader expectations. Okay. However, and this brings me back to an earlier question, I suspect this is not a global mystery. And Kathleen, I'm about to just say ditto to something you said. I suspect the mystery is at best a subplot. And I think this is probably a global internal genre story, which you called a character-led story. It's the same thing. Kathleen and I have just had two different ways of talking about it, but we're talking about the same thing. I think this is a mini plot structure, again, which I've talked about, I think, in season 5 on the podcast. So you can go back and have a listen to that. And so I'm a little worried that Andrew may have created a passive or a mostly passive main character. Now, can a story have a passive or a mostly passive main character? Sure. There are lots of examples, but it's really hard to do. It is not the stuff you put in your first book or even in your first 5 books. It's tough to do in a film where all the audience has to do is sit on a couch and just look at a screen. It's especially difficult in prose, where you are asking your reader to do the hard work of reading the book and creating the story in their imagination. Reading prose is much more labor intensive than sitting back and watching a screen. All right. So, if you're going to do a global internal genre or character-led story where your main character is passive or mostly passive, you've got to have some really serious writing chops. And that begins, honestly, with knowing how to write working scenes, because you especially need working scenes in a mini plot story. All right, Kathleen, that's all I've got to say about the opening pages. What's the final bit of advice that you have for Andrew?
I think so. Overall, in terms of the query letter, the best advice I can offer is to focus more on the plot and be more specific with the details that you're including, and to really think about how you're pitching this novel, including the prompts that you're using, and think about, is that the right place for this story? Yeah, because like versus the story that's coming through in both the plot paragraphs and the pages, because it doesn't seem to be matching up. Either take a look at the genre that you're pitching it in, or take a look at your story, and just there has to be a matchup there.
And for my part, the best advice I can give Andrew is to spend more time studying scenes and practice writing working scenes. Honestly, I think that's the biggest lever you can pull right now to make your opening pages so compelling that they're going to hook your reader.
Awesome. I think that wraps it up for this week. If you want us to look at your work, visit storynerd.ca for details on how to submit. To support the show, please leave us a rating and review and tell your writer friends about us. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. To join Valerie's Inner Circle, go to valeriefrancis.ca/inner circle. And to find out more about my agent wish list or what services I offer as an editor, visit KathleenFoxAgent.com and foxeditorial.com. And don't forget, there are 2 X's there. And remember, story theory does not have to be difficult. It's a tool to help you write more, not less. So take it one step at a time and have fun.